This is the official Eminem Iceberg. Well, kinda. Eminem is one of the most successful rappers to ever grace the genre, with well over 200 million records sold across his 30-plus year career. So it goes without saying, there's a lot to know about Slim Shady. And because of that, I created my own Eminem Iceberg as one of the first videos on this channel. And you guys always ask me to make a follow-up to that video, so I finally caved in and created another 10-tier iceberg with over 100 new topics to discuss. So just a few things before we get started. An iceberg chart is just a bunch of trivia on a topic with the most well-known topics at the top and getting more obscure and darker as we go down. I highly suggest starting with the other video if you haven't seen it, as it'll cover a lot of topics I'll reference on this list, and it's just the best place to begin. This iceberg is going to be split into two separate parts, and finally, there's going to be a few points in the video where there isn't much visually to show, so I'm going to be using some footage of rappers wrestling each other in the background to fill those sections. And before you ask, the game is WWE 2K24. But anyways, that's enough talking, as we got a lot of stuff to talk about. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Eminem Iceberg Part 2. $50 Cent. Curtis Jackson III, aka 50 Cent, is a New York-based rapper, actor, and businessman who is arguably just as famous as Eminem. 50 Cent started rapping in 1996 and was able to quickly gain some clout as a rapper, getting his first official record deal in 1999, signing to Columbia Records. He began working on his debut studio album, Power of the Dollar. However, on May 24, 2000, 50 was attacked outside of his grandmother's home and subsequently shot 9 times. He slowly but surely recovered from the attack. However, Columbia Records decided to drop 50 from the label. This left 50 without a label while recovering from the attack. However, during all this, 50 Cent's lawyer was able to get a copy of 50's debut mixtape to Eminem, and when he heard it, he was impressed. Eminem invited 50 Cent out to meet with him and Dr. Dre, and just a bit later, 50 signed an official deal with Shady Records. On February 6, 2003, Shady Records released Get Rich or Die Trying, which has gone down as one of the most hyped album releases in hip-hop and arguably music as a whole. The album has sold over 12 million copies as of the recording of this video and has become one of the highest selling rap albums of all time. He's released 4 other albums since then and has become a household name after branching out into owning his own label, acting, and even owning part of Vitamin Water at one point. 50's maintained a close personal relationship with Eminem, and he hasn't shied away from his feelings on M, seeing as how 50 owes a lot of his career to Eminem. Pete Davidson's SNL parodies. Saturday Night Live is a popular live comedy sketch show which has been going since 1975. The show often parodies popular things in the world of pop culture, and as such, Eminem has been parodied several times. Comedian Pete Davidson has parodied Eminem music videos multiple times, with the first being Stew, a parody of Stan where Pete writes a letter to Santa to get himself a PS5. The next parody was a parody of Without Me, which was about NFTs, where Pete, comedian Chris Redd, and Jack Harlow describe what NFTs are. The final parody in the trilogy was Forgot About Lorne, and was also featured on Pete's final episode of SNL before leaving the show. The parody featured Pete doing a parody of Lorne Michaels, the director of SNL, and actually featured a surprise cameo from Eminem, who basically tells Pete to stop the parodies because they're cringe. Honestly, all of these parodies are pretty so-and-so considering SNL sucks nowadays, but still. It's also worth noting that Pete made an appearance in the Houdini video, so Eminem has some sort of respect for Pete. The NFL Draft 2024. The NFL is the National Football League and is one of the largest sports organizations in the world. Every year, there's an official draft where each team can draft rookies to their team, and every year, it's a pretty big deal. The event will often feature guests, and in 2024, one of these guests was Eminem. On night 1 of the draft, Eminem took the stage alongside NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell to welcome everyone to the draft. The event itself was also held in Detroit, which only made the crowd go crazier for their hometown hero. However, the Eminem fun didn't stop there, as not long into the draft, a commercial aired for Eminem's next studio album, The Death of Slim Shady. And this commercial was the official first announcement for the album. Eminem's a hardcore Detroit Lions fan and has been seen at games multiple times, as well as interacting with the team. He's also interacted with the NFL multiple times, including Super Bowl performance. So keeping up with the NFL entries, the Super Bowl is the biggest football game of the year, where the final two teams standing face off with one another. The event is one of the biggest television events every year, with over 100 million people tuning in. One of the biggest parts of every Super Bowl is the halftime show, which will always feature a popular artist performing a full-blown concert in the middle of the game. There have been tons of notable halftime performances over the years, but one of the best in a while came during Super Bowl 56. And included several legendary hip-hop artists. The full roster for the performance included Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Mary J. Blige, Kendrick Lamar, 50 Cent, Anderson .Paak, and of course, Eminem. The 15-minute set included hits from all the artists, including Eminem performing Lose Yourself. This full concert performance can be found online. Tom Green. Tom Green is a comedian best known for his MTV show, The Tom Green Show, as well as his movie Freddie Got Fingered. Tom Green was this comedian whose comedy was mostly gross-out humor, like sucking milk out of a cow udder or playing with deceased animals or, stuff like that. But despite his blue humor, Tom Green was a huge celebrity, and arguably the first real absurdist comedian to ever become a household name. Tom was also a musician, and on one episode of The Tom Green Show, he premiered a music video titled The Bum Bum Song. The song is literally Tom singing about things he would put his bum on. Now, that video was a huge success and became the #1 video on TRL for several days. Fast forward to the following year. On April 18th, 2000, Eminem dropped the music video for his hit track, The Real Slim Shady, which just so happened to feature these lyrics. These lyrics were comparing how Eminem wasn't allowed to be uncensored on MTV, despite Tom Green doing everything he did, and then literally mocks the Bum Bum song. Even better too, during this part of the video, Eminem cosplays as Green in the Bum Bum song video. Green has since reflected on the lyric and actually liked it, not taking it as a diss whatsoever. He was even able to get the song to play during the credits of his movie Freddie Got Fingered, which is this nice wholesome family movie about a kid following his dream of being an artist. Freddie Got Fingered is the perfect movie for family movie night, and I'd highly suggest checking it out with your parents. Obi Trice. Obi Trice is an American rapper from Detroit, Michigan, who signed to Shady Records in 2000. Obi had multiple features across Eminem-related projects and released 2 albums on the label, one of which is Cheers and is one of my favorite Shady Records releases of all time. However, in 2008, Trice abruptly left Shady Records since he felt as if he wasn't being promoted properly. But he didn't have any beef with the label or Eminem after his departure. In fact, Eminem even featured on his follow-up album, despite his departure, so everything was okay between the two. Trice is still rapping today and even got involved in Eminem's beef with Nick Cannon, so it's safe to say he still has some sort of love for Eminem. Funny People. Funny People was a 2009 comedy film which follows a famous comedian, played by Adam Sandler, who was diagnosed with a terminal condition. Now, I don't like spoiling movies and TV shows on my iceberg, so I'll let you watch it for yourself if you're interested, but I can say there's this really funny scene where our comedian has dinner with Eminem. You can go watch the scene for yourself, but I highly suggest watching the movie in full as it's actually pretty good. The Kids. The Kids is a song which was featured on the Marshall Mathers LP, but is honestly probably the most forgotten song from the album. That's because you couldn't get the song on regular CD, and the only way you can get it was as follows. Either A, getting the special edition of the CD which featured the explicit version of the song, or B, buying the clean version of the album which featured the censored version. The censored version of Kids would replace the song Kim on the clean version of the Marshall Mathers LP, with Kim being far too dark and dirty to censor and still be listenable. This track features Eminem impersonating South Park characters and telling the kids of South Park not to do drugs. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a museum covering the history of music and some of the largest musicians to have ever lived. The museum itself has an annual event in which they induct new artists into the Hall of Fame. In 2022, on Eminem's very first year of being eligible to go into the Hall of Fame, he was nominated and ultimately won. Eminem's place in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was well earned, as what he did for rap and hip-hop cannot be denied. Bootleg albums. Simply put, there's tons of different Eminem bootleg media out there that you can find. Whether that be bootlegs of already existing albums or fan-made bootlegs, there are way too many out there for me to start listing off. The fan-made bootlegs range from fan-made albums which look and feel like real albums, to plain old meme albums, and some of these bootlegs can have pretty interesting stories behind them, some of which we've covered on the previous iceberg. and some of which we're going to discuss on this iceberg too. Make-A-Wish. Make-A-Wish is a non-profit organization which helps sick children by giving them one wish and making it happen. A very common wish you'll see is for the children involved in the program to meet a celebrity they admire. And there are multiple cases you can find of kids using their wish to meet Eminem. Now, there's not an official count on how many wishes Eminem has fulfilled. However, you can find multiple pictures and stories about Eminem meeting young fans who use their wish to meet Slim Shady. Bizarre. Rufus Johnson, aka Bizarre, is a Detroit-based rapper best known as one of the guys in D12, as well as being a lifelong best friend of Eminem. Bizarre himself has been rapping since his childhood, and as such, was very involved in the Detroit music scene. According to him, he was really good friends with Proof, who was hosting open mic nights and battle rap contests at the Hip Hop Shop, a legendary clothing store in Detroit on 7 Mile Road. Proof had been telling Bizarre about this white dude who was the champion, and Bizarre was interested in checking him out. When Bizarre finally got a chance to see Eminem do his thing live, he was amazed. Eminem and Bizarre started talking, and Eminem liked what Bizarre was bringing to the table. So the duo made a few songs together, and Eminem more or less took in Bizarre like he was a younger brother. And basically, the rest is history. Bizarre and Eminem have always been side by side, and to this day are still very close. In fact, if you see any picture of Eminem out there, there's like a 10% chance you're going to see Bizarre with him. For example, Eminem brought Bizarre along to his recent appearance at a Kamala Harris rally, where he got a picture with Obama. I want to leave this picture on the screen for a second because the fact that Bizarre has a picture with Eminem and Obama is one of the funniest things I have ever seen. Bizarre has continued rapping and has plenty of music out there that you can listen to, with new music dropping consistently. The Bizarre-Eminem friendship speaks to Eminem's loyalty, with Bizarre still collaborating with Eminem to this very day. Canibus beef. With the final entry in Tier 1, we have Eminem's beef with Canibus. Canibus had some pretty good clout in 1998, following the release of his album Canibus. And his beef with Eminem began before Eminem was ever even signed in the first place. Canibus was beefing with LL Cool J, and their beef started after a verbal altercation took place after LL wanted a certain lyric taken off a song, and Canibus refused to do so. LL and Canibus would subsequently release several disses at one another, one of which was the song The Ripper Strikes Back. So fast forward a few months, and Canibus's manager at the time, Wyclef Jean, told Canibus that Eminem had actually ghostwrote the track for LL. So Wyclef and Canibus confronted Eminem and asked him if he ghostwrote the track, but Eminem denied it. Now, they seem to have ended on decent terms, but Eminem mentioned Canibus on the track Role Model, and when Canibus heard the lyric, he was unsure if it was a diss track or not. And Canibus carried a grudge all the way up until the release of the Marshall Mathers LP, where he decided to record a track titled You Didn't Care from the perspective of Stan. However, this time, he's writing Eminem to let him know he likes Canibus now. Eminem then began dissing Canibus more and more throughout several songs, including several on the Eminem Show. Canibus finally released an official diss track on November 19th, 2002, on the track titled Dr. C PhD. Canibus took several shots at Eminem, as well as Proof, who was Eminem's hype man during that time. Now at that point, the beef quieted down with no movement for over a year, until a track leaked on Straight From The Lab titled Canibus. The track featured Eminem dissing Canibus pretty hard and is easily one of Eminem's best disses of his entire career. The beef settled down after this, mainly because around this time, Canibus joined the army, saying he did it to get away from music for a while and wanted to do something else that, quote, gave him a separate definition from what he had done all through his teens and 20s. Eminem and Canibus never really continued the beef after this, but Canibus did try to re-spark it in late 2010. Canibus teamed up with rapper DZK to diss Eminem, and DZK tricked D12 members Canibus, Swifty, and Bizarre into featuring on the song, unaware that it was actually an Eminem diss. Swifty went on to say the following: he asked us to do a track with him when he already was teamed up with Canibus without us knowing. They dissed him, took our verses, and added them to the song, so they could bring traffic and make it seem like we were turning on M, as a desperate attempt to be heard after ducking and dodging M for the last 7 years. It was a straight hoe move. Eminem never really responded, and it seems as if the entire beef is finally over, at least as of the recording of this video. The Canibus beef, though not being as familiar to the new school fans, has and will go down as one of Eminem's most well-known beefs ever. And no, Eminem's never admitted to ghostwriting the track. And if that's the case, that would mean this entire beef happened over literally nothing. The Couch Potatoes song. If you're not familiar, Weird Al is the king of parody songs with tons of hit parody tracks. Amongst his plethora of parodies, we have the track Couch Potato. Couch Potato is a song from 2003, which is a parody of the track Lose Yourself. The track features Weird Al detailing his obsession with television and going through all the different things he's watching on TV. The track was included on his album Poodle Hat as the opening track. The song was also set to have a music video, however we're gonna wait to touch on that in the follow-up video because that's deserving of its own entry. The Slim Shady EP. The Slim Shady EP is Eminem's first and, as of the recording of this video, only EP, released December 10th, 1997. Following the commercial failure of his first album Infinite, Eminem adopted a more confrontational and edgy persona, which we all know today as Slim Shady. The Slim Shady EP was our first introduction to the character, and as opposed to Infinite, this project garnered much more attention, and this EP just so happens to be the EP that Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine first heard of Eminem's. Songs in the EP were later repurposed for the Slim Shady LP, these tracks being Just Don't Give a F and If I Had. The 10-track project was released on CD, cassette, and vinyl. Bad Meets Evil 1998 single. Royce da 5'9" is going to go down as one of Eminem's best collaborators of all time, and there's no question about it. However, a lot of people don't realize just how far back their working relationship goes. And I'm not even referring to Royce being featured as an artist on the Slim Shady LP in 1999. Because 1 year prior, Eminem and Royce teamed up on 2 tracks titled Nothing to Do and Scary Movies, which were officially released as a double single by Game Recordings. The cover itself features 2 scantily clad women, and since YouTube is kinda weird about it, I'm just gonna blur it to be safe. The singles were well received, with Scary Movies being the closing track to the original Scary Movie. However, their working relationship soured not long after this, and we're gonna discuss that in just a few tiers. Rap Genius. Rap Genius, otherwise known as Genius, is a website where lyrics to songs are not only available, but can also be annotated by users to give interpretations of the meaning behind the lyric. So basically, if you're confused what a line means, you can hop on Genius and it'll most likely have some sort of explanation. Now, the website itself began as Rap Genius and was supported financially by multiple rappers, including Pharrell, Nas, and most importantly, Eminem. However, another interesting part of the Genius-Eminem partnership is that Eminem took the time to annotate several of his own lyrics. These annotations are very interesting reads, and here's probably my favorite. Regarding his opening words on Cleaning Out My Closet, where he's asking about the snare. This was true. I was recording and couldn't hear the snare. The engineer had it muted for some reason. I left it. Leaked alternative bang verse. Bang is a track from New York-based rapper Conway the Machine, which also features Eminem. The track came out in 2019 and was well received upon its release, with the artists' styles complementing each other's. However, in 2020, an alternate version of Bang leaked out on YouTube. Now, not only did this leak get plenty of attention for the simple fact it was new Eminem, but it also garnered attention due to some shots he took on the track. For starters, Eminem took shots at P. Diddy, as well as his media company and TV channel, Revolt. This resulted in Revolt responding to Eminem with a short, sweet little message. Eminem responded low-key apologizing for the bar and said it was never meant to be heard. Eminem also took a shot at rapper and podcast host Joe Budden, which gives me a great segue to talk about Joe Budden altogether. Joe Budden beef. Joe Budden is a New York-based rapper, radio show host, and podcast host who has some genuine clout to his name, and is easily one of the most underrated rappers of all time in my opinion. Budden's been doing music since the early 2000s, and in 2008, released his 3rd studio album, Halfway House, and the track was the first domino to fall in his beef with Eminem. That album included a track named Slaughterhouse and featured 3 rappers, Joel Ortiz, Crooked Eye, and Royce da 5'9". This track received tons of positive feedback, so the 4 rappers decided to form a group together, with their official group name being Slaughterhouse. The group released their official debut album, again titled Slaughterhouse, on August 11th, 2009. The group then planned to release their follow-up album and wanted to do so on a major label. And it just so happens Shady Records was interested and signed the group to Shady Records in 2011. Slaughterhouse would release their 2nd studio album, Welcome to Our House, on August 28th, 2012. And while critics liked the album, There was a strong dislike of the album by fans who knew Slaughterhouse prior to the release. Many people thought the album was a betrayal of the underground style, with the album sounding very polished. Basically, they went from features with people like Fat Man Scoop to features with people like Skylar Grey. Many fans theorized that the polished sound was due to Eminem's influence on the project, seeing as how it was his label, but also he executively produced the project. So after this, Slaughterhouse set their sights on releasing a third album, which would be titled Glass House. The album had an original planned release of 2014, but was pushed back multiple times with little to no information on the album. However, on February 7th, 2017, Joe Budden announced on his podcast that the album would never be released. In the following year, Crooked I announced his departure from the group. And not too long after that, Royce confirmed Slaughterhouse was officially over. Now, the disbanding of Slaughterhouse has a lot of moving parts to it, but one of the main reasons was Budden's feelings about Eminem. Budden has went on to say that he felt as if the group didn't need Eminem, and he believed the style and promotion that worked for Eminem wasn't going to work for Slaughterhouse. Budden's never been shy about his feelings surrounding M, including trashing the track Untouchable and the entire Revival album. And not long after that, Eminem released the song Chloroseptic, the remix, and according to Bizarre, these bars were aimed at Joe Budden. This spawned several responses from Budden, who continually bashed Eminem, which prompted Eminem to take another shot at him on the track Fall. And again, this prompted Budden to take even more shots at Eminem. These responses then spawned a Joe Budden diss track from Bizarre of all things. However, this was really the last shot in this battle, and since then, the beef has died down on both sides. Nowadays, Budden is still a broadcaster and has even supported Eminem through various beefs and has said some positive things about Shady. As for Slaughterhouse, a reunion has little to no chance of ever happening, and that album really has no chance of ever releasing. Also, I know this topic is already long as hell, but you gotta check out the Bizarre diss. That Bizarre diss is wild. Triumph the Insult Comic Dog. Since I just took you step by step through a rather serious beef, let's go through another one of Eminem's beefs, which is pretty weird. So, Triumph the Insult Comic Dog is a popular puppet character created by Robert Smigel, who, as you might have guessed, is an insult comic. Triumph is a very popular character and well known in the entertainment world, so it wasn't a shock that Triumph had his own bit at the 2002 MTV Music Awards. The bit started with Triumph making fun of musician Moby, and mentioned the fact that Eminem dissed him on Without Me. After mentioning that, Triumph got up and walked right over to Eminem to try to roast him. However, Eminem wasn't having it and pushed away the puppet, saying that he's already had his TV time. The bit abruptly ended and the show carried on. However, plenty of entertainment news outlets wrote about the situation. Additionally, Conan O'Brien, who had been regularly featuring Triumph on his show, spoke about the bit and aired some footage from a press conference where Triumph spoke about the situation, stating that he hoped Eminem would lighten up and dropped one of my favorite Triumph quotes ever, saying, "He should lighten up. I mean, my mom was a bitch too, but I don't go writing songs about it." Eminem referenced the event on the 2003 track Lady with Obi Trice, but went even further by releasing an entire track about Triumph, which is the classic track Ass Like That. Ass Like That shows Eminem discussing various situations where he's been arrested for different sex crimes. However, the whole time he's impersonating Triumph, who even made an appearance in the video, although not officially puppeteered by Smigel. Smigel spoke about the entire thing on the Dan Patrick Show in 2015 and basically said that he didn't think Eminem was going to take it so seriously, and he truly thought Eminem was going to find the entire thing funny. Triumph remains Eminem's weirdest beef in my opinion, and since we're talking about beefs, we might as well go for the trifecta and discuss Moby beef. As stated in the previous entry, Eminem dissed Moby on the track Without Me. However, that diss came as a response to some comments Moby made about Eminem. After the 2001 Grammys, Moby said the following: "I support Eminem's free speech, and he's very good at what he does. But he's also a misogynist and a homophobe and a racist and anti-Semite. I'm 33 and can see through it, but I can't imagine that an 8-year-old in Idaho sees it as just a joke." In response, Eminem threw the Without Me diss at Moby, and then the 2002 MTV Music Awards happened. The entire situation with Triumph was planned from the start, so they sat Moby a few rows behind Eminem. When Eminem noticed Moby, for practically the rest of the night, he started staring him down, called him a pussy, and even handed him a drawing of Eminem choking out Moby. Once the Triumph situation happened, after the cameras cut away, Eminem flipped Moby off right to his face. After the awards, Moby would write a blog post about the situation, stating, "The truth is that I honestly and also thought the whole Eminem thing was done in some semblance of humor until Eminem called me a pussy. That was off camera. And then threatened to beat me up. Ah well. I think that Eminem is talented and interesting, but I'm kind of stunned at the anger he has for me, seeing as I'd never met him until last night. And I love Triumph the Insult Comic Dog, and I was more concerned for Triumph's well-being. If Eminem wants to pick on someone, fine, pick on me. But don't diss the dog puppet. Triumph the dog puppet is my hero." The entire beef died down after this, but one interesting fact is that Moby stated in an interview that he actually kept that drawing Eminem gave him. He even got it framed, and it hangs in his house to this very day. 8 Mile's Lost Battles. So if you're watching this video, you've probably seen the movie 8 Mile, so I'll skip the explanation of the movie itself. However, in the special features of the movie, you can find some bonus rap battles from B-Rabbit. Now these battles are believed to have been from a deleted scene where we would have seen Rabbit battle multiple people in a montage to work his way up. However, that idea was ultimately scrapped. Now I've seen some comments saying that the extras would have rap battles during lunch breaks, and the best battlers are the individuals you see battling Eminem in these scenes. Basically, between the cuts of them shooting fake movie battles, they were having real battles. You can also find these extra battles on YouTube with a simple search. Crank Yankers. Crank Yankers was a show featured on Comedy Central and would feature real prank phone calls from the show's writers and celebrity guests, with the prank calls being reenacted by puppets. The amount of celebrities that this show featured is way too long to name here, but amongst them was one Marshall Mathers on Season 3, Episode 9. I'll let you guys watch the episode for yourself, and I won't spoil it here, but it's important to note that his appearance on the show was to be expected by fans, as the team of Crank Yankers collaborated with Eminem prior to the start of the season, as some of the main characters from Crank Yankers appeared in the music video for Ass Like That. My Son Marshall, My Son Eminem. My Son Marshall, My Son Eminem is a 2008 autobiographical book written by Eminem's mother, Debbie Nelson. The book highlights Debbie's life, including raising Eminem and the fact she sued him in the year 2000. The book is practically Debbie's side of the story when it comes to Eminem and goes into explicit detail about what it's like to be the mother of Eminem. The book also features many family photos and other lyrics written by Eminem. The book sold very well and is a great read for anyone who wants to know what it's like to raise Slim Shady. The Bass Brothers. Mark and Jeff Bass, otherwise known as the Bass Brothers, are a production duo that are credited as being the ones who discovered Eminem, and have worked as some of his main producers. The Bass Brothers discovered Eminem after hearing him on a radio station, which I've talked about in length in my video discussing Eminem's first album. The brothers helped him produce his first official studio album, Infinite, as well as the Slim Shady EP. And even after getting discovered by Dre, he was still signed to the Bass Brothers label, Web Entertainment. In fact, every last album released by Eminem all the way up to the Marshall Mathers LP2 was also technically released by Web Entertainment. Additionally, they did a lot of production work for Eminem, including some of his biggest tracks, including Lose Yourself, which was produced by Jeff Bass. Straight from the Lab 1 and 2. Straight from the Lab 1 and 2 are two bootleg albums which featured plenty of leaked, previously unheard, and unreleased Eminem materials. The first album was released in 2003 and is believed to have been leaked by one of Eminem's brother's friends. Now, seeing as how the album's a bootleg, it was often re-released by many different bootleggers who oftentimes included extra songs. However, this original bootleg featured these 7 tracks. The songs on this original bootleg were intended for the Encore album, but since the songs leaked, Eminem had to make new songs, which is how songs like Big Weenie came to be. I discussed the cause and effects Straight from the Lab 1 had on Encore in my video about Eminem bootlegs, so make sure to watch that. Anyway, 8 years later, Eminem faced a second round of leaks with the release of Straight from the Lab 2. Straight from the Lab 2 is the spiritual successor to the original and featured 22 tracks, most of which are believed to have been meant for the scrapped King Mathers album. These 2 CDs are very interesting releases in the Eminem world, as both of them had huge impacts on Eminem albums and are very dark days in the world of Eminem. Suge Knight Altercation. With our final entry in Tier 2, we have Suge Knight. Suge Knight was a co-founder and CEO of Death Row. Knight was one of the most important figures in hip-hop in the 90s, and his label found quick success with their first 2 albums. The Chronic and Doggy Style. And both of these records credit Suge Knight as an executive producer. However, Suge wasn't an ethical businessman by any means, and there's too many stories to list to prove that, including how he apparently hung Vanilla Ice off a balcony until he agreed to sign over the royalties to Ice Ice Baby. Yeah, Suge brought his gangster ways to the CEO lifestyle. However, Dre eventually left the label due to Knight's thuggish behavior, and he would start Aftermath. Fast forward to 2003. Eminem had blown up, and the label had just signed 50 Cent, who was in the process of releasing the Get Rich or Die Tryin' album. However, during a music video shoot for In Da Club, Suge Knight made a random appearance with his entourage. So, The Game and Bizarre have both spoke about the situation, as well as Tony Yayo, who said once Eminem heard Suge was there, he walked outside and stared him down. Suge basically stared down Eminem, 50, and whoever else was standing there, and then left the scene without incident. Now, this story's been told a few different ways by a few different people. However, this is the most accurate story I can tell after listening to the multiple different ways people have told it. I might be slightly off, but at its core, Eminem and Suge Knight had an intense stare down which, under different circumstances, could have ended very badly. Suge continued his thuggish ways until being sentenced to 28 years in prison in 2017 for involuntary manslaughter. I don't really know how to end this entry, so I'm going to end it with a completely unrelated belief that I have about Suge Knight. I wholeheartedly believe that Suge Knight was involved in the passing of Eazy-E. The NFT. Okay, I'm going to start with this one just to get it over with. I'm not even going to pretend to act like I understand what an NFT is, but here's what I do know. These digital images were selling for literal millions of dollars. And for a while, tons of celebrities and organizations were joining the craze. Well, Eminem was no different, as in 2022, Eminem purchased an NFT for around $450,000, nearly $500,000 for this. That's insanity. Additionally, the music video for From the D to the LBC was themed around NFTs, with Eminem being animated as his Bored Ape or whatever the hell. They also had this weird performance of the song at the MTV Awards where they performed live as their NFT guys, but did it like the Gorillaz would have done it, but like a lot worse and more cringy. Yeah, the Eminem NFT experiment was strange, and I'm ready to stop talking about it. Mommy. Mommy is a skit which featured on the Slim Shady EP, and when you listen to it, you might recognize what you hear. That's because this skit is the same exact skit you'll hear at the beginning of 97 Bonnie and Clyde, and at the end of Kim. We discussed how this skit was used on these songs to signify that these songs are meant to tell one coherent story. However, the fact that the skit is used on this EP might confuse someone. It might also confuse somebody that the skit is named Mommy, but it's never actually been said why. Ultimately, I think it boils down to Eminem creating the skit with whatever storyline in mind, and then later repurposed it for the Kim story. Outsidaz. The Outsidaz were a New Jersey-based rap crew who saw many members throughout the career. However, the most important members to know for this iceberg are Young Z and Pace One. Despite never truly reaching their full potential as a group, they still made waves in the rap game, most notably for their affiliation with D12 and Eminem. Eminem worked with the Outsidaz several times early on in his career, appearing on the Outsidaz EP Nightlife. Eminem's also shouted out the Outsidaz numerous times throughout his songs. Hell, Eminem was even technically a member of the Outsidaz at one point, so yeah, these dudes were pretty close. However, Pace One and Young Z have had a falling out with Eminem, as the two are said to have recorded verses for the track Amityville from the Marshall Mathers LP. However, their verses, for whatever reason, were cut from the album. Z and Pace were upset by this, and nothing else was ever really said about the Outsidaz again, at least from the Eminem perspective. However, in 2015, Eminem talked about the Outsidaz on the track Fine Line, showing appreciation to Z and Pace, and saying he'll always consider himself an outsider. However, in the eyes of Young Z, that was too little too late. But we're going to discuss that in the next Iceberg video. I'll Hurt You. I'll Hurt You is a 2006 track from New York MC Busta Rhymes, featuring Eminem. The track is another great early Eminem leak, which is yet another track to fall victim to the period of Eminem's career where music was leaking like crazy. Now, this song is actually believed to have been a Busta Rhymes track as opposed to it being Eminem's, and it would have been featured on the album The Big Bang, but was scrapped after it leaked. This track featured one of my favorite Eminem verses from this era, and it's sad that this song never got a proper release because it never got the attention it rightfully deserved. Throw It Up. Throw It Up is a track off of the 2011 album Radioactive from Tennessee-based rapper Yelawolf. The track features not only Eminem, but also Gangsta Boo, who is a legend in her own right. Seriously, Gangsta Boo joined 3 6 Mafia when she was 14, so make sure to get familiar with her when you're done with this video. Anyway, the track is your standard Eminem feature, but stands out to me because a good amount of people simply missed this feature when it came out, and a 2011 Eminem feature is something that shouldn't have gone as unnoticed as it did. So if you were like me and missed this one, make sure to go check it out. Marvel Comic Books. Anybody who's listened to Eminem as much as I have is probably well aware of Eminem's lifelong interest in comic books, more specifically, the Marvel superhero franchise. However, even if you're aware of this, you might be surprised to learn that Eminem is actually an official character in the Marvel universe, at least in the comic books. You see, back in 2009, Eminem was doing plenty of promo for Relapse, and one of those pieces of promo was an official Punisher comic book featuring Eminem. Now, without spoiling the comic book, the story revolves around the Punisher coming after Shady and attacking his posse. From there, Shady tries his best to stay alive throughout the comic book, and yeah, I'm not a comic book guy, but the scans I found make this seem like it's pretty good. I wasn't able to find exactly how it was sold, but one Reddit commenter claimed that they were made by XXL magazine with only 10,000 copies pressed. And that's not even his only Marvel comic book collaboration, as Eminem has also graced the cover of The Amazing Spider-Man #1, printed in 2022 and featuring M rap battling Spidey himself on the cover. Now, the comic book itself only features Eminem on this alternative cover, and he doesn't actually appear in the story. But who cares, it's Eminem battling Spider-Man with Miles Morales and Daredevil in the crowd. The comic book was available on M's merch store and thehall.com with around 6,000 copies being made. Both of these comic books have become highly valuable collector's pieces and will cost any collectors thousands if they really wanted one. Everlast Beef. Everlast, aka Whitey Ford, is a Los Angeles-based artist best known for his work with House of Pain, and then found solo success following the breakup of the group. Everlast had a pretty heated beef with Eminem and D12 in the late 90s to early 2000s, which all started with a miscommunication between the pair before a concert. Everlast's version of what happened was that he approached Eminem in an attempt to congratulate him on his newfound success, however Eminem ignored him. However, Eminem's version is that he simply didn't recognize Everlast, and Everlast never approached him. This simple misunderstanding blew up into a full-blown beef, starting with Everlast dropping a verse about the interaction on the track Eardrums Pop remix, which all in all recounted the interaction and told Eminem he might catch a beatdown. In response to this, Eminem regularly dissed Everlast in public and dropped an official response track titled I Remember, which is this acoustic rap diss that's pretty unique for Eminem's disses, but is still pretty good. However, Everlast would respond with the track Whitey's Revenge, which, in my opinion, is the hardest diss track to ever drop aimed at M. The track makes references to Kim, as well as Haley, amongst plenty of other things, and again, it might be the hardest diss Eminem has ever faced. Eminem and D12 then responded with the track Quitter, which originally was supposed to feature Limp Bizket. And remember that fact for the next entry. Anyway, after Quitter came out, both sides of the beef made statements that they were done with the beef, and outside of a few other slight disses, and another track aimed at Eminem from an Everlast collaborator, the beef was pretty much over. However, the beef did pick back up again not long after, and that's where the Limp Bizket stuff comes into play. Limp Bizket beef. Okay, so at this point, the Everlast beef seemed to have been settled, and that was that. But seemingly out of nowhere, during an interview with Limp Bizket member DJ Lethal, he was asked who would win in a fight, Eminem or Everlast. Lethal responded by saying that Everlast would kick Eminem's ass.
So then, like, not even 2 weeks later, these motherfuckers are on MTV talking about, they asked him about the Everlast thing. They asked Lethal about the Everlast thing, right? Lethal said, I think personally that M is a good rapper. He's a better MC, but I think that in a fight, Everlast will whip his ass. Now, come on, dog. He's supposed to be doing that song. Yeah, what the f***?
Now, this statement is interesting when you remember from the last entry, Limp Bizket was literally supposed to be on the Everlast diss track Quitter. And yet, Lethal did a complete 180 and decided to back Everlast. This irked Eminem big time, and in response, he made yet another diss, this time aimed at DJ Lethal, Fred Durst, and the entirety of Limp Bizket. This track was titled Girls and was the hidden track featured at the end of D12's first album, Devil's Night, and explains the entire situation from his perspective. Now, Fred Durst had never really talked about what happened with Eminem until a Reddit AMA of all things in 2013, where he said the following: "I haven't heard anything from Eminem since he turned on Limp Bizket. I don't speak much about it, but it really hurt my feelings at the time because I thought we were better friends than I suppose we were. I understand why he was upset, mainly with Lethal, but over time, I've learned there are better ways to deal with things that upset us. I've remained a loyal fan of his and choose to remember the good times we shared. He is definitely one of the very few best rappers of all time." The Hip Hop Witch. So, The Hip Hop Witch is a comedy film released in 2000, which is this movie which is a low-budget spoof of the Blair Witch Project. So, in The Hip Hop Witch, there's this powerful being which attacks wannabe rappers, and due to the attack, the victim's record sales go up. Basically, if the Hip Hop Witch attacks you, you become a famous rapper. And the main characters try to find and get attacked by the Hip Hop Witch. In the process of their hunt, they encounter tons of artists who are also attacked by the Hip Hop Witch, including Vanilla Ice, Royce da 5'9", Ja Rule, and a good amount of others. However, the main cameo in the movie was from none other than Eminem, who in a scene recounts his experiences with the Hip Hop Witch. Prior to the release of the movie, Eminem attempted to have his scenes removed, with MTV News reporting that his lawyers made a formal request to remove his scenes from the film. That didn't happen though, and the film was released as originally intended. Later in 2003, a re-release of the movie was announced. However, this time the artwork was changed to literally feature Eminem on the cover. And it's said that the new edit of the movie would showcase the rapper even more, basically trying to cash in on the footage they had of Eminem. However, the re-released version was abruptly recalled without explanation, although you gotta believe it had something to do with Eminem's lawyers. I mean, come on, they literally had his face plastered on the cover. Some copies still found their ways into consumer hands, with some stores refusing to send back their copies, and you can find the movie for pretty cheap on eBay. King Mathers. King Mathers is the name of the scrapped album which would eventually become Relapse. Now, take this entire entry with a grain of salt, as there aren't many strong sources, and instead all the information based around this album comes from other rappers' interviews and some educated guesses. Following the release of Encore in 2004, Eminem went on an extended hiatus with many different setbacks, including divorce, addiction, exhaustion, and the unfortunate passing of Proof. However, in 2007, talks of a new album began making their rounds when rapper Cassius mentioned Eminem was working on a new album in an interview and referred to that project as King Mathers. It's believed the project had a good amount of work done on it, yet it never came to fruition. Now, it's never been formally addressed why the album was shelved. However, the most believed theory is that it had to do with the struggle of his personal life finally taking a toll. All of this came to a head when in December of 2007, Eminem overdosed in the bathroom of his home, and he was very close to passing away as a result of this overdose. So, for whatever reason, the album was scrapped as a result. However, again, this is all purely speculation as to why the album was scrapped. The ghost of King Mathers lived on though, as in 2011, Straight from the Lab Part 2 dropped, and most of these tracks are believed to have been originally intended for the King Mathers album. Other supposed tracks from the album are still leaking to this very day, as well as supposed track lists from the album. Syllables. Syllables is the fan name given to a leaked song from around 2010. And this song featured multiple rappers. Amongst the rappers on this track, we have Eminem, Stat Quo, Cassius, Dr. Dre, 50 Cent, and Jay-Z. This song, like many others, was leaked on Straight from the Lab Volume 2 and has since become a fan favorite amongst leaked Eminem tracks. The song focuses on today's children being more receptive towards simple music as opposed to bars. The track is great, and it's worth noting that the official name for this track was going to be My Salibable, as stated by Stat Quo in an interview. Scribble Jam. Scribble Jam was an old-school hip-hop festival held in Cincinnati, Ohio from 96 to 2009. The festival featured multiple competitions including breakdancing, beatboxing, graffiti, and multiple other contests which highlighted other aspects of hip-hop culture. However, the most remembered competition is the MC Battle, aka the Battle Rap Competition. And while the event itself is legendary, the main reason it's remembered is that in 1997, Eminem partook in the competition before he found mainstream success. The contest saw Eminem in the final battle against rapper MC Juice. a Los Angeles-based rapper who had some legitimate street credit and was actually more popular than Eminem was at this time. The battle itself lasted multiple rounds and is considered by many as one of the most famous battles in hip-hop history, with Eminem ultimately coming up short in the battle. However, Eminem gained significant clout from this event, which helped him get to the place he is today. As for MC Juice, he's still rapping and can be easily found on Instagram. And despite never getting to the same level of Eminem, it has to be cool as hell to be able to say you beat B-Rabbit himself in a rap battle. Hey guys, I'm just breaking in with a quick 15-second self-promo. If you like this video so far, please like the video and make sure to subscribe because it helps me grow my channel, which will get me to where I can make more of these long-ass videos for you guys. Okay, shameless self-promo over. Let's get back to some entries. Royce da 5'9" beef. Royce da 5'9" is a Detroit-based rapper who's been in the game longer than I've been alive, and is a regular collaborator of Eminem's, who is a fan favorite. Eminem and Royce formed the rap duo Bad Meets Evil and have had plenty of classic tracks together. So it might come as a surprise to learn that they haven't always seen eye to eye, and in fact, were considered to have been beefing throughout the 2000s. Eminem and Royce met in 1997 and became fast friends and collaborators, releasing several tracks together. Now, the duo had a decent working relationship, with Royce even being on the original version of the classic track Renegade, but we're going to discuss that in the follow-up Iceberg video. Anyway, Eminem was able to secure a ghostwriting position for Royce, writing for Dr. Dre's 2001 album, with Royce writing the track The Message from the album. However, Royce's manager at the time made comments about Dr. Dre, saying that Eminem had to coach him through how to rhyme. Dre heard about this and was upset by it, so he approached Royce about the situation and basically told Royce to fire his manager. However, Royce decided to defend his manager and stood by him, which ultimately ended the relationship between Dre and Royce. After that, Eminem offered Royce a position on the Anger Management Tour as his hype man, and it's universally believed that Royce declined the offer. However, Royce has stated he never turned it down. Ultimately, Proof took his spot as hype man on the tour, and Royce started focusing on his own career. Royce continued trying to work with Eminem, however, Eminem was busy working on his project with D12, which led to Royce believing that D12 was hurting his relationship with Slim. Sometime later, D12 was working on a mixtape with DJ Green Lantern, and Royce submitted a freestyle for the project. However, after hearing the freestyle he submitted, D12, including Eminem, took the track as a diss. This led to Eminem ghosting Royce, and Royce deepening his feelings that D12 was against him. So Royce started taking jabs at the group, including some very harsh words he had for D12 during an interview.
Who would you say is ruining rap right now? Like, who do you think's whack, or who would you want to start a beef with anytime soon? D12. D12?
Worst fucking rap group ever.
This interview led D12 to drop an official Royce da 5'9" diss track titled Smackdown. And in response, Royce released a diss track which he had already recorded years prior, which focused mainly on Bizarre but also mentioned former D12 member Bugs, who had been unalived some years prior. So this led to D12, Eminem included, jumping one of Royce's people, escalating the beef even further. This caused Royce to drop another diss track, Malcolm X, taking on every single member of D12. Proof came back with another diss track to which Royce responded to, and with both rappers being from Detroit, the chance of real-world violence started getting more and more possible. This fact came to fruition in 2003 when Proof and Royce got into a scuffle outside of a Detroit nightclub where both rappers pulled weapons on each other, and both were subsequently arrested. However, Proof and Royce were placed in cells right next to each other and took the opportunity to talk it out and ultimately reconciled the beef. At this point, the beef was squashed for the most part, with Royce appearing on a D12 mixtape in 2008. Despite this though, Eminem and Royce still didn't have any sort of relationship, at least in the public eye. Now, it's important to understand that Eminem stayed out of the beef between Royce and D12 lyrically, outside of one small jab he threw on a freestyle, but he still chose D12 over Royce, so it's safe to say that there was some sort of bad blood there. However, in 2011, it was announced that the rap group Slaughterhouse was signed to Shady Records, and it just so happened that Royce was a member of that group. This ultimately reunited Bad Meets Evil, and the rest is history. This entire situation was covered in part in the legendary Beef documentary series, but it's shocking to see how many current Eminem fans are unaware all of this went down. I'm just glad that Bad Meets Evil was able to finally reunite and release Hell the sequel, because that album was gas. Zoe Winkler. Starting off strong, Zoe Winkler is the daughter of legendary actor Henry Winkler. aka the Fonz. So while Eminem was working on the Slim Shady LP, Zoe listened to some of Eminem's music in her friend's car. And not only was she not a fan, but she was disgusted at what she heard. So disgusted that she took the time to call an Eminem associate and leave a scathing review of Eminem. This voicemail was then recorded and repurposed as track 8 on the Slim Shady LP. As the story goes, Eminem originally offered Zoe $300 to use the voicemail. However, seeing as how she didn't need the money, she instead told M that if he wanted to use it, he had to take her out to dinner. And even more surprising, it's said that they actually got along really well when they did meet. Eminem was quoted as saying the following after meeting with Zoe. The whole way down to the restaurant, I was thinking, yo, I'm gonna have to smack this girl. There I was, all ready to defend myself. And then when I got there, she was like, oh, hi Eminem, it's so nice to meet you. The whole thing just flipped on me. Booyah Tribe. This entry is one of those stories which sounds like it came straight out of Grand Theft Auto. So Booyah Tribe is an American rap group consisting of 5 brothers, all of which were of Samoan descent. They had an interesting story involving Eminem which was revealed by a nephew who goes by Monsta Gunja. As the story goes, in the early 2000s, the Los Angeles Crips were attempting to extort Eminem. So Eminem, or Eminem's team rather, reached out to the Booyah Tribe for protection. Now, all the members of the Booyah Tribe were all previously gang-related, but following the unaliving of their brother, they all left that lifestyle. However, you gotta believe they could still get down with the get down if needed. So after handling the business for M, they were asked what they wanted in return, to which they said they wanted an Eminem feature. And Eminem paid up, with his feature on the track 911 from the Booyah Tribe album West Coastra Nostra. The track itself is really good and well worth the listen, and knowing the story behind the track makes it that much better. I mean, tell me this doesn't sound like something you would have done with Franklin and Grand Theft Auto 5. The Wash. The Wash was a 2001 comedy movie written and directed by DJ Pooh, and starring Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. However, the reason this movie is on this list is because it features a cameo from Eminem. Again, I'm not going to spoil it because it's worth a watch, so let's just go ahead and move on. Stat Quo. Stat Quo is an Atlanta-based rapper who was signed to Aftermath Entertainment in the early 2000s. Stat Quo was featured on multiple Shady projects, including Encore and The Re-Up, but still never did much on the label outside of a few mixtapes and some features, but never really did much on a label outside of these features and a few mixtapes. And in 2008, he ultimately left the label as a result of his displeasure in how his debut album release was being handled. However, Stat Quo has since given some new information regarding the departure from the label, and said it had to do with the fact he made Eminem mad. As the story goes, Eminem wrote a chorus for the song Dance on It, and M wanted Stat to perform it himself. However, Stat wasn't feeling the hook and straight up told Eminem he wasn't going to do it. He continued on, literally telling Eminem he'd need to pay him $1 million to do the verse. And when he said that, Eminem was done. Stat went on to apologize and added that he realized how stupid it was of him to tell Eminem he wasn't rocking with his verse like that, and that harshly nonetheless. Stat believes this is why he never got an album on the label and seems to regret how the entire thing was handled. Wherever you are, Stat Quo, Godspeed. Roots. Okay, so this one's weird, but in 2015, the website hiphopvibe.com posted an article stating that Eminem was setting up to release an album titled Roots in 2015. The article had some information about the supposed album, and fans began eagerly awaiting the possible announcement. However, the excitement was short-lived as Eminem.News was able to contact Eminem's publicist, who flat out said the article was not true. That's it. Some obscure website posted a story without sources and people took it as fact. Where have I heard that one before? The leaked Rihanna lyric. Eminem and Rihanna have collaborated plenty of times throughout their careers and have created some of the biggest tracks from both of their catalogs. However, in 2019, it was revealed that Eminem said some really wild things about Rihanna in an unheard verse from around 2009. The verse came from the leaked track Things Get Worse, where Eminem basically takes Chris Brown's side in the situation between Brown and Rihanna. And if you're unaware, Brown and Rihanna got into an altercation in February of 2009, which left Rihanna with several serious injuries. So yeah, taking Chris Brown's side is a very controversial stance to say the least. The lyrics made their rounds online, with many being disgusted by the verse, and Eminem finally addressing the lyrics on the track Zeus, formally apologizing to Rihanna for what he said. Touch It Live. At the 2006 BET Awards, there was a performance from Busta Rhymes, which was a remix of the track Touch It and featured multiple artists including Missy Elliott, DMX, Mary J. Blige, and a surprise final verse performance from Eminem. While Eminem's appearance during this track is pretty hype, as you can tell by the crowd's reaction, the main reason the performance is so important is because this was Eminem's first live performance following the unaliving of his best friend Proof, which had only occurred just a few months prior. The performance is more or less Eminem's return to the music game following his bereavement, and as such is a pretty bittersweet performance to watch, as even though he kills it, the official act of Eminem finally returning to music without his friend by his side is a very sad thing indeed. The song's a banger though. Mannix. So before we start this entry, I want to apologize because in my first Iceberg video, we discussed every last member of Soul Intent and Basement Productions, besides one person, Mannix. Mannix was a member of these groups in a production capacity while also doing some artwork here and there. Mannix is the older brother of DJ Butterfingers, who was also a member of these groups, and outside of that, Mannix is hard to find any information on. There's a Discogs page and some people in forums taking educated guesses as to whatever happened to him. Chemical Warfare. Chemical Warfare is a track featured on the album of the same name, released by DJ, producer, and rapper, The Alchemist. The Alchemist was a well-respected artist and friend of Eminem, so his contribution on the album came as no surprise. With Eminem taking the entirety of track 4 to drop this pretty horrorcore-esque verse with one of those relapse-era accents, The Alchemist has since talked about the feature, stating that he was a big fan of the verse despite Eminem's personal feelings towards the use of accents on the track, which he personally hated. He even said Eminem has apologized for giving him a verse with an accent, which Alchemist brushed off by saying he's lucky to get anything from Eminem, which is very true. Basically, Eminem featuring on your work in any capacity is a huge honor, accent or not. Invasion. So staying on the topic of DJs, back in 2002, New York-based DJ and producer DJ Green Lantern released Invasion Shady Records mixtape, which was the Shady Records mixtape featuring plenty of freestyles throughout, but most notably featured several original diss tracks from Eminem. These tracks included The Sauce and Nail in the Coffin, which have gone on to become fan favorite tracks from the Eminem diss track repertoire, whatever. There were also 2 follow-up Invasion mixtapes, with Part 2 and Part 3 coming out in 2003 and 2004, which too featured new, original Shady Records content. These tapes are a pretty cool listen and worth looking into for the Eminem historians. Eminem by Tom MacDonald. So back in 2021, during the NFT craze, Eminem teamed up with Nifty Gateway to release several NFTs. Amongst this was an original instrumental beat made by Eminem. When bidding opened, tons of people were making bids of thousands of dollars, and when the bidding finally closed, the man who won was a rapper named Tom MacDonald. Now, if you don't know this name, first off, you're really lucky. But secondly, Tom is a rapper who is similar to Eminem in style, however, his raps are typically covering very right-wing ideas and themes. Fans started talking about how Tom won the auction, and Tom addressed the purchase in a Twitter video, although he didn't outright confirm he purchased the beat. However, in May of 2021, all the rumors were confirmed to be true when Tom released the song and music video, Dear Slim, produced by Eminem. The song is practically a fan fiction which picks up where the Stan music video left off, but doubles as Tom taking an opportunity to address Eminem for what he means to Tom, basically saying their careers share plenty of parallels. The song is worth a listen even if you don't like Tom, and even with how I personally feel about him, the idea that he purchased this NFT to make the song is pretty awesome. And I want to clarify something, I don't dislike Tom because of his politics, but to listen to a dude rap MAGA and whiteness and all this is just not fun to listen to. I respect his hustle and his freedom of speech, but if you're asking me how I feel about the music, I think it's trash. Lies and Rumors. Lies and Rumors is a D12 track which has largely been forgotten about, despite the fact it was literally featured as the credits track to the legendary 2004 movie Shark Tale. The song was only ever officially released on the Shark Tale soundtrack CD. Now, full disclosure, Eminem is absent from the song, but it still feels like it deserves a place on this iceberg for being so random. I also wanted to use this entry to take a second and talk about Bizarre, as Busy has had 2 other surprising movie soundtrack appearances which I know you've probably never heard of. The first one comes from the movie Kangaroo Jack, Good Day USA, as Bizarre is credited as a performer on the song Mama Said Knock You Out. I couldn't hear Bizarre on the actual song itself, but he probably just helped out with the original scratch track. However, his other credit is even more random. Bizarre has a credit in the 2007 movie Nancy Drew. And even better, he actually performed on an original track, Party Tonight. Now listen, I know you might not like that I'm talking about someone else for a moment on this iceberg, but you can't tell me Bizarre being in Nancy Drew isn't hilarious. John Guerrera. Side note, I'm not sure if it's Guerrera or Guerra, so I'm just gonna say Guerrera, because that's how Eminem pronounced it, but people have said he pronounced it wrong on the song, so I don't know, I'm just going with Guerrera. So there's this famous story which took place on June 4th, 2000, where Eminem found his ex-wife Kim kissing a club bouncer in the parking lot of some nightclub type beat. Eminem proceeded to confront the bouncer and hit him with a weapon before being arrested. Eminem was ultimately given probation for the incident. Well, that bouncer on the receiving end of that assault was a man named John Guerrera. John went on to sue for the incident, and according to one article I found, Guerrera received $100,000 in a settlement. Eminem has made multiple references to the incident throughout his music, most notably throughout The Eminem Show. Guerrera isn't really online, at least that I could find, so I can't give you a current day update, but you can find some interviews he's done telling his story. And keep the story in mind as it's important to know for our next entry. Goofy Gary. Gary Kozlowski, aka Goofy Gary, is an old friend of Eminem who has been mentioned by Eminem in his music, most notably the skit The Kiss from The Eminem Show. The Kiss is a skit which is a reenactment and a retelling of the story from Eminem's perspective of the event we discussed in the last entry. Now you might be wondering, what the hell does that have to do with this Goofy Gary guy? Well, Gary was actually present during the altercation. Gary drove Eminem to the club that night, and because of that, he lent his voice to the skit. Nowadays, Gary has his own guitar company with the biography explaining not only how he founded the company, but how he met Eminem. I also found a forum from 2016 where someone claiming to be Gary talked about his life and friendship with Eminem. Gary's a pretty interesting person, as even though he's in the music world, he's never seemed to try to leech off of M and instead has made a path for himself. And he even got a feature on the Eminem Show out of it. Godspeed, Goofy Gary. Bobby Creekwater. Bobby Creekwater is an American rapper originating from Atlanta who at one point was on the Shady Records roster. Bobby started rapping in the mid-2000s and in 2004 was noticed by Shady Records, which led to Eminem signing him to the label. Bobby sat in the label for a bit before making his official Shady debut on the Re-Up. Creekwater featured across 5 tracks, including a remix of Smack That. Bobby then went back into not really doing anything on the label, outside of a few mixtapes, a bit of production work, and a feature here and there. He was said to be working on his first official album with Eminem acting as executive producer. However, this album never came out, and in 2009, it was announced that he would be leaving the label. Creekwater left the label on his own as opposed to being dropped and has stated it was strictly a business decision. And he still has all the love in the world for the Shady team. He has this track, The Day I Got Dropped, where he addresses what happened and he's still rapping to this very day. Our House. Our House is a leaked song from the year 2000, believed to have been recorded in 1999. The song is an interpolation of the 1982 track Our House by Madness and is a humorous story of Eminem being kicked out of the house by his mom. It's believed this song was originally intended for the Marshall Mathers LP as stated by Paul Rosenberg in an interview, but ultimately it didn't make the cut, which I assume had something to do with the sampling, but that's just me speculating. The other interesting part about this song though is that the chorus is sung by none other than Fred Durst of Limp Bizket. And DJ Lethal made the beat. The song's creation was covered in an archived blog post, but it's important to note that Eminem ended up beefing with Fred and Lethal within a few years of this creation, so perhaps Eminem's happier that the song never released. Pimp Likeness. Sticking with songs, Pimp Likeness is a D12 track which featured on Proof's 2005 album Searching for Jerry Garcia. The track sounds like it came right off any D12 album and is a really good hidden gem for anyone who enjoyed the D12 days. The song remains as one of the only few mainstream D12 tracks outside of the D12 albums themselves, and is worth listening to for anyone who wants to get as much Eminem and D12 as they can. Dean Geislinger. So back on the original Iceberg, we discussed how Eminem was discovered by Dre, which I'll remind you of real quick. Basically, after Eminem released the Slim Shady EP, he participated in the 1997 Rap Olympics. Even though he placed second at the event, a random guy approached Eminem to buy a copy of the tape. That guy just so happened to be a temporary assistant of Jimmy Iovine, who gave Iovine the tape. Iovine gave the tape to Dre, and the rest is history. Well, that assistant was a man by the name of Dean Geislinger. Basically, if it wasn't for Dean attending the 1997 Rap Olympics, there's a really good chance Eminem would have never become what he is today, and this video wouldn't exist. Everyone, go type "Thank you, Dean" in the comments below. Relapse 2. Relapse was the sixth studio album released by Eminem in 2009, and it's my personal favorite album from Eminem. And it was heavily implied and even reported by Rolling Stone that what was to follow was the album Relapse 2. However, in April of 2010, Eminem tweeted out, "There is no Relapse 2. So, what happened? Well, it's never been officially addressed by M for the most part, with most information coming from other artists. Although Eminem's made it very well known through his music that he doesn't care for Relapse. Eminem finally addressed what happened to Relapse 2 in an interview during the build-up to Curtain Call 2. Basically, it all boiled down to Eminem not being a fan of the accents on the album, as well as how demented he sounded. He also clarified once more that there is not going to be a Relapse 2. But he did say there are probably enough scratch songs to make the album if he wanted to. Thing is, he doesn't want to. The Marshall Mathers LP Snippet Tape. Stretch Armstrong Presents the Marshall Mathers LP Snippet Tape was a 2000s promotional cassette tape made to promote the Marshall Mathers LP. Now, snippet tapes are a pretty foreign idea to a viewer in 2024, but back in the day, before everyone was using the internet, one way to promote yourself was by giving these promo tapes to radio stations, music shops, and DJs as a way to get the word out. This tape featured a few snippets of tracks as well as the entirety of The Real Slim Shady, alongside freestyles and other random skits. And since we're talking about snippet tapes, the Slim Shady LP Snippet Tape. Just like our previous entry, Stretch Armstrong Presents the Slim Shady LP Snippet Tape was a promotional tape from 1998. To promote the Slim Shady LP. Just like the other snippet tape, this cassette featured snippets of tracks as well as prank calls and other skits and freestyles. This sampler is a bit more rare, but isn't hard to find either. However, it's going to cost you a bit more than the Marshall Mathers LP snippet tape did, so start saving some money. Unmastered Sequence. Sticking in the same vein as the snippet tapes, Unmastered is a 1999 promotional CD for the Slim Shady LP. The CD featured unmastered tracks which were gonna possibly be used for the Slim Shady LP, with most tracks having some differences in them. Some of the differences are as little as songs taking longer to fade out, but some of the songs have drastic changes, such as completely new instrumentals. It's said that this CD was given to a handful of media partners, most likely as a way to show what they had cooking up, as well as seeing as how people felt about each track. The CD itself has become one of the hardest CDs to find for a collector, with tons of bootlegs of this floating around. I can't find much on how to tell the real thing apart from a bootleg, so keep that in mind if you decide to try and seek this one out. Good Morning Remix. Okay, so this entry is probably my favorite entry in this entire video. So, the controversial P. Diddy released the song Hello Good Morning as part of his musical trio Diddy Dirty Money in 2010. However, when Straight From The Lab Volume 2 released in 2011, the bootleg album featured a remix of Hello Good Morning, which featured a new verse from Eminem. While the verse itself isn't all that good, the fact that this collaboration happened is very interesting for the story of Diddy and Eminem. Now, Diddy and Eminem never really got along to begin with their issues being brought front and center in the MGK beef, since Diddy had signed MGK to his label, Bad Boy Records, and gave MGK the green light to diss Eminem. Now, Diddy has since been arrested on several serious charges, which I can't describe in detail for the sake of YouTube guidelines, and tons of stans have posted about the situation saying Eminem always knew Diddy was bad. And while yes, Eminem has spent a majority of his career dissing Diddy, this song still kind of sticks out like a sore thumb when you realize Eminem did in fact intend to collaborate with Diddy, even though it was never officially released. If those weird alt-right Twitter accounts get a hold of this information, I bet they're going to have a field day. And if that happens, sorry Eminem, it happens. DJ Butter is a legendary Detroit-based producer and DJ who has worked with plenty of rappers from Detroit, including D12 and Eminem. So in 2001, DJ Butter released an album titled Shit Happens, which featured plenty of Detroit talent. And on the intro to that mixtape, titled Get Buzzed, we are treated to Eminem telling us how to prepare for the album. However, he drops a certain gay slur multiple times and says to bash them. However, the main reason this album is known isn't because of the poorly aged intro, but it's due to the highly graphic album artwork. The front cover of this album literally features human waste leaving what appears to be a butt, although it might be a woman's chest now that I'm looking at it. The album cover is a pretty bold choice for someone trying to get their CD to sell, but to each their own. Still, the intro track at the beginning might go down as one of Eminem's least known features, and considering what he says on the track, he's probably happy about that. And finally, Detroit basketball. So, it's well known that Eminem took an extended hiatus in 2005 before returning in 2009. This hiatus was due largely because of his well-documented addiction issues and near unaliving in 2007. After getting sober, Eminem had to practically relearn how to rap again. And one of the first songs, if not the very first song he recorded after getting sober, was a song named Detroit Basketball. The track itself was about the Detroit Pistons, as made evident through several references he made to former Pistons players. But the real reason this track is interesting is because there are over 20 versions of the song. Basically, this song was M relearning how to rap, and as such, he continuously made changes to the song before scrapping the track altogether. The song eventually leaked in 2011, and while talking on Paul Rosenberg's podcast, he stated he's not sure exactly which version leaked. However, fans were able to find the original file was dated to May 13th, 2008. And if that's accurate, the leaked version was recorded only a few weeks after Eminem sobered up. Now that you know the story, it's a pretty good listen, as you can definitely tell Eminem wasn't on his A game, and it's even better to know that there's about 20 other versions of this song which have never leaked. Maybe one day we'll hear all the other versions of Detroit Basketball to hear the progression. However, once you know the story, you can make the argument that this was the official death of Slim Shady, as this was officially Eminem relearning how to rap and practically reinventing his entire persona. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for part 2 of the Eminem Iceberg. If you watch this whole thing in one sitting, you're a nerd. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you guys so much for watching. As I said, part 3 is probably available on my channel right now if you're watching this more than 3 or 4 weeks after it's been posted, so go check that out. Also, make sure to subscribe because it helps me out a lot, and, you know, I'm doing YouTube full-time now, so it would really help me out. But I'm going to go ahead and go because this has been like a 3-hour recording session, so yeah, I want to go to bed. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and as always, remember, Kobe sucks.